Welcome back to The Real Story. Just a few months ago, lawmakers were busy drafting and debating legislation. The governor put pen to paper on a new state budget and a host of other bills, making them law. Many of those laws kicked in at the start of the new fiscal year, which was July 1st. Joining me now to talk about them and how they might impact the state is Dr. Gary Rose, professor and chair of the Department of Government Studies at Sacred Heart University. Gary, thanks so much for joining me.
Good to be here, Matt.
All right, I want to get into it. Give us your state of the state. You know, we just wrapped up the fiscal year. We started another. We ended the last fiscal year with a more than $86 million budget surplus. And the new state budget has some record-setting tax cuts in it, as you know. So, are we in a good place financially? And how did the state of Connecticut get here?
Well, we are in a very good place financially, as you suggest. A good portion of that, however, is not permanent, in terms of the budget. A lot of that has to do with COVID money that came to Connecticut, and as a result of that, we've been able to do some creative things that otherwise we would not have been able to do. And when that runs out, then some forecasters are suggesting we're going to be back in a deficit again. Yeah. And so, the good times are going right now, and the government up there in Hartford is certainly has a lot of cash, but at the same time, I wouldn't say that that's going to be something that we're going to see in the in maybe even the foreseeable future. It's going to run out in a year or two.
All good things must come to an end, right? All right. Yeah. A lot of changes for the new fiscal year, as you alluded to, including an increase in the minimum wage. So 2019, Governor Lamont signed that law to get to $15 an hour by 2023. So this year is the year it goes to $14 an hour. It would give Connecticut the fourth highest minimum wage in the country. Democrats say it's long overdue. Some Republicans say it puts more stress on businesses who are already struggling and operating on thin margins. How do you see the increase in the minimum wage impacting Connecticut?
Well, Matt, you raise an interesting point there about how some Republicans said that this would have an adverse effect on business. And while it is true, the governor has committed to raising the minimum wage incrementally every year. It has been rising. It was $13 last year, and it's going to $14 now. And it's really a mixed story there. And it is true there are some people that will probably bring home, more money as a result of that, working jobs in the state, not necessarily high profile, difficult, complex jobs. And at the same time, though, I do think there is an argument to be made that businesses will have to raise the cost of some of their services, right. And as a result of this, in order for the businesses to make ends meet. So, some people are going to benefit, but in the long run, I have to say, you're asking my opinion on this, that I think consumers are going to feel the effects of this minimum wage law. I really do.
And Gary, one change that may not impact people's wallets quite as positively is the increase in the diesel tax. Governor Lamont put a gas tax holiday in place, but has repeatedly refused to include diesel. And now the tax on it has gone up 23% to more than 49 cents a gallon. Do you think it was a mistake not to include diesel as tax-free, and will it might make the price of other goods and services more expensive?
Well, it comes back to the same thing with the minimum wage. And when you start raising taxes on diesel, and now we're talking about, the price of moving goods into the state from New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and other places, then obviously the consumers, again, are going to feel that, just like they're going to feel the rise in the minimum wage. And so, it has to trickle down to the stores and the price of goods, of course. And so, do I think it was a mistake to do that? Yes, I do. And I understand the argument that it's going to have a broad-term effect on what we're paying for in grocery stores and other places, sure.
All right, I want to move on to a different topic here. Following the murder of George Floyd and the passing of a police accountability bill, Connecticut has also required that all police departments have body and dash cameras. Do you see this as a positive or negative thing for the state?
Oh, I see it as very positive. And I know that the police in the last year or two have really come under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of intensity out there with in urban communities, of course, with police officers. Yet at the same time, I think this improves, certainly, without a doubt, the quality of policing, and I believe that they're going to be, certainly the police, that is, they're going to be certainly more judicious in how they enforce the law, as they should be. And so, I think the body cameras and the dashboard cameras, all of that will certainly lend itself to probably higher standards of policing. I see no problem with that.
It's expensive, though, isn't it, Gary? I mean, there's state grant money, I know, that's available to partially fund this, but what's the enforcement component to make sure that police departments are actually doing this? Who's overseeing?
Well, yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, you're going to have obviously have some oversight of that. At the same time, though, to come back to your original question, I do believe, and yes, it is costly. At the same time, though, I think anything that improves the quality of policing in Connecticut is certainly justified. And given the incredible intensity that has occurred in the last 2 years between police forces and certainly, again, getting back to urban communities in particular, I think that this could lend itself to perhaps more trust and confidence in the work of our police officers.
Okay. As we talk about, law enforcement, crime, criminal-related issues, it might not get, all the attention, but these catalytic converter thefts that we've been hearing all across the state, they've been on the rise. The General Assembly took some action this session, and now vehicle recycling facilities will not be able to accept loose catalytic converters. Do you think that this new law will actually do what it's supposed to? Will it deter people from stealing catalytic converters?
Well, from what I understand, a lot of these catalytic converters have been, brought to junk dealers and so forth and sold. And so if, in fact, we have a law that is going to penalize people who purchase these or take them in and do with whatever they do with them, then obviously I think that's a good piece of legislation. It's probably going, because then it does not become, financially worthwhile for the thefts of these items. And so, yeah, I think that that law, as I look at it, and I read the legislation there, I think it makes sense that it can cut down on the stealing of these catalytic converters and the way they fence them and make profits off of that. I think that might have a deterrence and a deterring effect on the stealing that's going on out there. And you can hear cars go by you all the time without catalytic converters now. You can hear the loud muffler and everything and stuff. So, yeah, I think the law actually made sense, and I don't know what the downside of that law is.
Okay. July 1st brought employees, some new protections in the workplace. Can you dive into some of that for us? As I understand it, it has to do with Connecticut's Paid Family Medical Leave Act, and then also protecting employees who refuse to attend certain meetings. Yeah,
well, what that reflects, that particular piece of legislation that you're referring to, basically protects unions in Connecticut. And it is true that we have had businesses at times hold meetings where they try to dissuade people from forming unions and what they call captive audience activity that goes on within companies. And this law now says you can't bring people into a meeting to talk about those issues. You can bring people in to talk about performance, as I understand it, but to bring people in to try to dissuade them and really in many ways intimidate them from forming a union, that's really what that law is about. So it does protect unions. I guess really your position on that piece of legislation depends on whether or not you think unions are a good thing. And so in some cases, I think they are. In other cases, unions certainly contribute to the rise of prices as well.
Ahead of a new school year, it is also my understanding that lawmakers took some action on school air quality. This is an issue that's been talked about a lot more recently, especially due to the COVID pandemic. So tell us about this new program. I mean, are we talking about upgrading HVAC systems here at schools?
That's exactly what it is. We have grant money going to boards of education across the state, and they're supposed to, and let's hope they do, they're supposed to use that money to improve ventilation and, as you say, HVAC, heating and also ventilation and air conditioning and everything else in schools. And, I was unaware that there were really serious health issues within public schools and that there was a need for that until I read about this bill. And I would say that it's a proper response to what's going on. My only concern is that the money doesn't get diverted by boards of education into something that it was not intended for. So I would say yes.
All right, Dr. Gary Rose, Chair of Governmental Studies at Sacred Heart University. Got to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining me.
Okay, Matt.
Thank you for joining us on The Real Story. Remember, you can catch our interview in full on our website, fox61.com, or download the free Fox 61 News app. We'll see you back here next Sunday, 10 a.m. Have a great day.